circuit with Patrick in the six-wheel turn. Continues in its trajectory and rams the Ligier driven by Jacques Lafitte, struck by the driver, was dead. 5th of March 1977 saw one of the most appalling accidents in the history of Formula 1. Lauda won the race despite everything, described it as one of his greatest victories. Checked second in front of Depay, Hunt, Mass.
We've done a lot more work than I guess we'd originally thought we were going to do.
Kyalami in Zulu means my home. And for those 45 years, Kyalami has been the home of South African motor racing. There's no doubt about it.
The track in itself is South Africa's cream. I mean, this is pretty much the pinnacle of motorsport.
What is evidently clear is that Kyalami is back off the canvas and the track seems to be heading in the right direction. For most South Africans, this is a safe haven for motorsport in the country, and it looks like it'll be coming back to Johannesburg.
You know, it's appropriate because it's 45 years since this track was first laid out on this very piece of property. And in those days, it was quite a schlep from Joburg to come out to Kyalami, and it was in the middle of nowhere. And I remember in 1961 when the track opened, just prior to that, Francis Tucker actually took a tractor and ploughed the outline of the proposed circuit. I mean, they ploughed the strip in this grass so that you could see more or less what Kyalami was going to look like. And I think that's where the heritage is. It was started by enthusiasts, people who had a passion for motor racing. They put their own, most of them were businessmen, if they were lawyers or auditors or whatever they were, their passion was motor racing, and they came and built the Kyalami Grand Prix circuit, just out of sheer guts and determination, and obviously with commercial support as well. So in 1961, Kyalami started. And you know, I want to just remind you, Kyalami in Zulu means my home. And for those 45 years, Kyalami has been the home of South African motor racing. There's no doubt about it.
You know, looking back in history, my first experience of Kyalami was back in January, I think it was 1999, when I was actually racing in the sports car series, the Sondo Racing Development team in the Sports 2000. And I think for me, the track at the time was just the most amazing circuit. It was the best circuit that you could have in South Africa. It had a lot of undulations, and the fact that the corners were so fast, actually scary at times. You know, you'd come into a corner thinking, oh, I should be in fourth gear and I should be flat, but naturally your foot will be just saying, hey dude, But your racing instinct comes into play, and you just have to trust the car that it will actually go through the corner without actually letting go.
And I think in those early days, the 70s and 80s, when Formula 1 came to Kyalami and we saw the Nigel Mansells and all those big names of people coming here and making South Africa a postcard on the world map. Everybody looked at Kyalami and they said, you know what, this is South Africa. If they can run a Formula 1 Grand Prix with all the medical requirements, the marshals, the standard of officials, then they can't be just a little backward country on the tip of Africa. They must actually have something going for them.
You know, at first, it's your first time you're riding on this track. The track is constantly changing either left or right, and it's going up and down. So there's a lot to take in and a lot to learn. So for a first time experience, it is daunting.
In the early years, initially, it bedded down. I mean, we used to have catch fencing. Youngsters of today don't even know what you're talking about when you talk about these fences that used to be between poles, and they had to put up store bales for the bikers and all that. So it went through this evolution. It was in the mold from the point of challenging your ego, but not in the sense of being dangerous. Okay. It was always built to the specification of, let's not try and hurt people at the track. That's not what it's about. It's about bringing the best out. Has he got the guts and the will and the chops to actually go in on that tight corner and put his nose into the corner first? And that's what differentiated the drivers. That's what differentiates the drivers, a great driver from a good driver. It's those guys who take the chance. Going through the S's. I mean, parts of Kyalami as they are today have not changed since 1961. So that section over the old subway through Sunset, Clubhouse, the S's up here, that's exactly, if you core down into the tar, that bottom piece of tar is the 1961 tar. It's still exactly as it was. And you know what, that's what these drivers said. It challenges you, and when you get it right, you almost want to yelp, that you got it right, and it takes a couple of laps to do that. They loved it. They would all come back here. If there was a vote, can we go back to Kyalami? And the drivers and the teams had to vote, guaranteed we wouldn't have an issue. They'd be here.
One of the challenges that I actually faced was that, you make one mistake in one corner, it actually affects the entire lap on its own. So you needed to really get it right from the word go. And, and with time I was able to actually perfect that. And hence we managed to win my championship in 2000 in the sports car series. And of course, Kyalami was one of the grounds and the races that actually kind of put me on the pedestal that I needed to be in to move into the career.
The name Kyalami was one of the 10 most recognized words about South Africa for many, many years. So that heritage is there. We had those glory years because in those days, there wasn't as much entertainment. Motor racing used to pump the adrenaline. Saturday afternoon, this place used to pack. Guys would come and park next to the fence with their families, have a fantastic time. And over years, up until as the South African government became the pariahs of the world, unfortunately, the pressure started mounting. So that in 1985 was the last Formula One Grand Prix.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's been an astonishing year since we last met. It was just about a year ago, wasn't it? We've done a lot more work than I guess we'd originally thought we were going to do. But we really see a great future for the Kyalami. But underpinning everything, of course, is the passion of Kyalami, the racetrack, all its history and heritage. Since it first opened in 1961, there have been 20 Grand Prix here over the years. Final one, 1993. So, we're a serious business, but we'll never forget where Kyalami's come from.
Track in itself is South Africa's cream. I mean, this is pretty much the pinnacle of motorsports in terms of track-wise in South Africa, I believe. I mean, we have the luxury of having a number of circuits in South Africa, but without doubt, from all the drivers in South Africa, we all know that Kyalami is pretty much right up there at the top. And it's not just about South Africans racing on a circuit, but also internationally. As you mentioned, the likes of Senna, the guys in Formula One, sports car racers, they've all raced here and they've experienced it and they still talk about it till this day, I know of Bruno Sprengler, current DTM driver for BMW. I was with him recently and the guy was just telling me how excited he was about driving the circuit and he's looking forward to the new circuit considering the changes that they've made. Although he did mention that to turn 1, turn 2 and 3 into Nashua was pretty much one of his most most thrilling experiences, purely because you really flat taps on a pedal and you gotta just hold the car and just trust that it will actually make it through the bends. And I think from looking at it in history as well, for me that was also my favorite point. From the start finish all the way through to Nashua was by far the most thrilling part of Kyalami, purely because it required big kahunas, as one might say, but at the same time you had to have the mental aptitude to be able to handle and understand the forces that are acted on the car as you manage those 3 turns. And it's just that kind of track that's quite engaging from a driver's point of view.
I actually went on record at the time as saying we haven't lost the South African Grand Prix. We've actually just lent it to some other countries to host while South Africa sorts out its internal problems. And that proved to be true, because when Nelson Mandela was released, Bernie Ecclestone, the man on a handshake, said, you know what, you guys are not the pariahs of the world anymore. Nelson Mandela's out of jail. I will bring the Formula One back to South Africa. And true to his word, in 1992 it came back. And 92 and 93, we had the Schumachers, we had the new era of Formula One drivers coming in. While I emphasize Formula One, that was the motivation and the kind of hub for young South African racing drivers. Guys like Gugu Zulu, Chops, all these guys used to look up and say, you know what, I can aspire to be that. So the value of having the Formula One was that you had the cream of the crop in South Africa. They were accessible, people looked up to them, the cars sounded magnificent, the atmosphere was good. So 92 and 93 were good years, they were golden years, everything was going fantastic at Kyalami. Schumacher actually said, you know what, Kyalami is one of the best tracks for him as a driver because it's got a combination of corners. He said the problem with the more traditional kind of tracks is that they're very predictable, they've got long sweeping bends, and he says the trouble with Kyalami is no matter how many laps you do, there's always a corner that's going to catch you out. He says, you know, you cannot let your concentration lapse. This is from Schumann. You cannot let your concentration lapse for 1 second, because if it does, the track bites you. He said, and what I love, his words, I love about Kyalami is no two corners are the same. I'm working all the time. I don't want to talk on the radio. I don't want to listen to anything. I just want to see my pit board and enjoy the circuit because it's pushing me right onto the edge of my driving skill. And if a circuit can do that and a great driver like Schumacher can make those comments, it's just unbelievable. What a great endorsement.
I mean, this circuit, it's unforgiving, you know. In one section, you know, if you're in the groove, it really does work nicely for you. But if you do have a moment, it really punishes you in a big way.
Nigel Mansell actually won the last Grand Prix in '85 and won the first Grand Prix back at Kyalami in '92. So there's a bit of a story there as well. But all these young, aspiring, great drivers mixed with the legends, it was just unbelievable. I mean, you could not imagine how privileged we were to be able to host those people in South Africa. And they all went back to their countries with a good feeling about the country. They all said, you know what, that South Africa is innovative, they've got engineers, they've got people who really love the sport, and a lot of our technical people behind the scenes. Look at Rory Byrne, how successful he was with Schumi at Ferrari. South African born, designed the cars, really a fantastic guy. So we've delivered, and Kyalami has always been that common denominator. That's what's brought the best out in all the people. Then unfortunately in '93, the rand started collapsing against the dollar and it became very expensive. So unfortunately couldn't carry on paying and we lost the Formula One Grand Prix. And although that wasn't the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end, it actually did have an effect. Local racing still prospered right through to the early 2000s, based on the momentum that had been built up by these great people and great events. And the track always delivered. I mean, it really is a racing driver's dream track to race on. And then unfortunately, as you know, more entertainment came along, people got used to options. They could go and see mega stars at rugby stadiums, soccer stadiums. We had entertainment, we had people coming and visiting the country. You had the same rands, but you had so much more choice. And slowly but surely, Kyalami started losing its appeal. And I think also we weren't aggressive enough and changing to keep up with the trend. You know, we've all got skin in the game. Guys' reputations have been made and broken on this track. And you know, they like to bring their grandchildren here and they like to show them where they raced. And it looked as though it was all going to be lost. And then, thank the Lord, at that auction, Toby Fenter from Porsche stood up and bought it. And if you look today, what we've got at Kyalami, 2016, you look at this facility, you look at the track, how it's been improved, you look at the excitement and the new business plan. I think that's the main thing. We now have got an iconic engine to pull all the coaches of motorsport behind it. We've had all the coaches, but they've been stuck in the station. There's been no engine to pull it. So Kyalami is the engine that you hook your coaches, so rallying, motocross, karting, everything is hooked behind this engine, which is Kyalami.
Also from a competition, there's lots of opportunities of overtaking, and obviously you have to be strategic in terms of how you approach it. And I think that's why the challenge is so big and why everyone still respects Kyalami for what it is and is looking forward to the new and improved circuit as well.
It needs to have the conference center, it needs to have the international launches to make the business work, because there's been a lot of money invested in making this a 21st century track. And it's on a par. Now when a visitor says, I want to go and see Kyalami, You can't wait to go and pick him up and bring him here. Bring your kids, bring your grandkids, we'll show you the track. And that's the difference. There's that pride again. And so with the business plan to keep it sustainable and financially viable, you have to have all the other businesses plugged in, but motor racing still has its part to play in that heritage. And I'm sure that we're going to see endurance races, we're going to see the likes of a Lamar type race, we could maybe even see MotoGP, who knows, all of those things that are more attainable financially. Correct. The sky's the limit, but we need to be proactive and get out there and make these things work.
When looking at the motorsport industry right now, outside of the name Geniel de Villiers, the only South African name that is creating waves on the global stage is South African Brad Binder, who's currently finished on the podium 6 times this year and a contender for the MotoGP3 crown. Maybe in a few years, the talent that is Binder can grace his skill on the newly developed Kyalami racetrack. Steeped in history, the new Kyalami has a much sharper business model.
We've managed to get right in South Africa. We've got a great nursery. So young kids of 6 years old are going into karting. In this country, a 6-year-old can go into karting and actually start racing. So our nursery, where we nurture people and teach them the right basics, is very strong in South Africa. The problem is that as you become more successful, it becomes more expensive, because now you need more expensive machinery, you need more sponsorship, and that's where the ceiling is for these guys. And that's why they hook out here and they go overseas. They hope to get noticed by a talent scout. Brad Binder's KTM and Red Bull have picked him up. So we actually create that foundation in this country through karting, motocross, 6-year-old little kids on motocross bikes. Brad Binder would have been racing on circuits from probably 7 or 8 years old. So the foundations, the structures in South Africa for grassroots motorsport, amazingly strong still. Great circuits, great mentors, people who can teach you how to ride. I mean, we've got really good talent in this country, and they're transferring that to the youngsters.
Kyalami in the past has gone through various changes after the fall of Formula One. The track went through a barren period and looked to have faded away, but now a strong drive to revive the South African motorsport industry, with the track seen as a new possible cash cow. There seems to be restored faith that the place will go from strength to strength.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the business model, it's evolved, it's developed as we've gone, but we see great opportunities in terms of things other than motorsport. Motorsport will happen at Kyalami in the future, but it's not our prime focus at the moment. We need to make Kyalami a sustainable venue, and there's many motor racing circuits around the world that get themselves into financial difficulty. That's not our intention for Kyalami. So we've invested in areas. We've just taken you around the handling track, 1.1 kilometre new handling track. I've just shown you the platforms. We've just been around our it's almost brand new, the pit building. We've completely transformed the space so that we can have, gala dinners, exhibitions, conferences, all kinds of things. So lots of revenue opportunities apart from motor racing, which is what's going to make Kyalami sustainable in the long run. So it's all good news, I think.
With the business plan to keep it sustainable and financially viable, you have to have all the other businesses plugged in, but motor racing still has its part to play in that heritage. And I'm sure that we're going to see endurance races, we're going to see the likes of a Lamar type race, we could maybe even see MotoGP, who knows, all of those things that are more attainable financially. Correct. The sky's the limit, but we need to be proactive and get out there and make these things work.
When it comes to a circuit like Kyalami, it needs to function as a business. We're no longer in the luxury space whereby it can just be a motorsports circuit only. It doesn't function that way. We need to move with the times. You look at cricket, you look at rugby, all of those facets of sports have actually moved forward with the times in our generation. We are a generation where we want instant gratification instantly. This thing of sitting on a corner and just watching a car and then let it disappear and then watch it again. People don't want to do that. People don't come to live events anymore as much as they used to. But I think for what Kyalami is doing now in terms of changing itself as being just a normal circuit only, it's now a business facility. You can have conferences, you can have launches. It just shows that they're also moving forward with the generation that we're in and the way things are done from a business point of view. And I think that's a positive thing. In terms of sports-wise and getting more racing activities coming through, certainly I'm sure that's part of the plan going forward. Whether we'll get Formula One back in South Africa, realistically, I don't think so. And I think we've got bigger issues than that at this moment in time. It would be a nice thing to have, but the cost of having that event for just 1 week, I think, you can run the whole motorsport scene for generations on. So I'd rather say let's take that money and build our own motorsports as a whole, as a hub, and build that into a business as opposed to the hobby that it currently is in. And then we can look at bringing in Formula One, perhaps bring in cheaper formulas to be able to just get the excitement going from an international point of view as well as local, and then maybe spearhead and look at Formula One years on. But right now, definitely not F1. Rather, let's build our own sports locally, get our own heroes up there, and then we can then talk about it.
It is said that Porsche South Africa put in over 200 million while pumping in further millions into the restoration to build a full multi-purpose facility for all to enjoy.
Yeah, driver training, I think we touched on that. That's an important part of the model, the dynamic handling platform plus the handling track. We see lots of great business happening as a result of that. I think I'd like to talk, if I may, about the South African Festival of Motoring, which is coming along, 5-day event in August, September. All the major manufacturers coming to Kyalami, trying to replicate something that's successful in Great Britain called Goodwood Festival of Motoring. So that's another great event for Kyalami. But to be frank, we need revenue every day. We'll have Christmas Day off, I hope. But we really see, every day we need to get revenue into Kyalami to start paying off the huge investment we've made. It's astronomical. And then obviously take care of maintenance. The track we're standing on, we're going to have to spend money on it in years to come, so you need to put money aside in all the features and facilities, because we want to make sure it remains a top grade facility. This place was completely run down when we bought it, so we're proud of it. We're going to maintain it properly, but to do that we need to generate income from all kinds of places other than just the motorsport that I know everybody is passionate about, Kyalami, but Kyalami is going to be so much more than that. I mean, we see motorsport, I can't announce it, but we're getting close. There will be an opening event, we hope this year. So we're working on that at the moment in terms of the first major motorsport event here at Kyalami. And of course, I think we just need to get the thing finished, get it established, and this motorsport is going to come. We're convinced over the next period of time, without a shadow of a doubt.
Kyalami, for many South Africans, will be considered a safe haven for motorsports. And what is evidently clear is that motorsports in this country will reach new heights with the new revamped Kyalami. I'm Pashka Mudlia for ANN7, Johannesburg.
And South Africa starting off with a great moment on boards of this Kyalami circuit.